Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Chartreuse Leprechaun. My name is Mark, your host, and it's time for a little bit of personal time, that once a month thing. Yeah, well, today we've got some technical updates, we've got some problems solved, we've got some health news, so be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Set yourself up for notifications, all that fun stuff, so you don't miss anything around here, because trust me, there's always something going on around here. So let's get started. We'll start with the channel stuff. We had our second and third live stream. Let's start with the good parts. Positives are always better, right? So on the positive side, it was fun. Having that second computer to use as a support role in the second live stream was a huge plus. Side note, we're still tweaking things on that computer. We had one of the things we didn't do was a driver cleanup from the, it's a long story, but we borrowed pieces from an HP, we borrowed pieces from another computer, and we stuck a new processor, an old hard drive into a new case with a new power supply and motherboard. Needless to say, there's a lot of drivers on that hard drive that we didn't clean up, so it was causing some problems. We got that fixed. And then we're using that Ryzen 5 3400G, which is basically what they call it, Zen Plus. Zen 2 was the 3000. Yeah, the 3400G is basically a Zen Plus, a 2000 series with integrated graphics. But you know what? It's a massive improvement over what we had. That outdated processor was an Intel W3570 from 2009. Yeah. Coupled with a 2 gigabyte graphics card. Yeah. And my son is thrilled to be able to play his games again. No mouse stuttering, no weird screen effects, just cropping up. Yet, no, he hasn't given up woodworking. But he is decompressing properly by blowing stuff up, wrecking cars, killing zombies. I feel much happier now. On the other hand, the first stream of Stranded Deep was, well, it was a nightmare. There were audio problems, there was stream quality issues, there was freezing. Yeah, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Up to and including a game crash or just total freeze there at the end. But we did manage to figure out what went wrong. Everything, the game, the stream, everything was running on the GPU. And the overworked GPU was having an awful time trying to figure out what to do, and it eventually just gave up. So we made a bunch of adjustments in OBS and tried it again. And my biggest worry was we would demonstrate the proverbial definition of insanity. You know, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results and, not getting them. Fortunately, we did get those results this time. The second live stream went off mostly without a hitch. I forgot to lower the audio on the game, and being by myself, I didn't catch it. It was fine in my headset, just not on the stream. I'm so sorry about that. Still, all in all, massive improvements, which means my computer is functioning just fine. Well, other than needing a better CPU cooler. Our temps are getting up there while we're rendering and things like that. High intensity processor stuff. It's not the 100 plus degrees that it was before we repasted the CPU, but definitely higher than I want it to be. And they keep getting higher during rendering. And they started at 70C after the repasting, which was awesome, especially after the 100 plus. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's already back up to 76. And that worries me. I'm worried we're headed back to the hundreds. And so any cooler recommendations are welcome. As inexpensive as possible, of course. Just leave those suggestions in the comments below. Please and thank you. And now I'm going to make a confession. After episode 5 of Fallout 4, I made a bunch of changes. I downgraded the graphics drivers. I downgraded my rendering software. I changed a bunch of stuff. It was the only way we could get Fallout 4 to run after it was a disaster. And if you go back to episode 6, I explain a lot of that. Oh my God, that was such a nightmare. Oh God, please don't have us repeat that. One promise I made back then was I would not upgrade anything till we finished Fallout 4. However, I was doing some digging in the DaVinci Resolve forums, and it seemed that their crashing issue that I'd been experiencing back then has been fixed. So I gambled. I upgraded the graphics driver and the DaVinci Resolve, and I did it a couple of weeks ago, and so far, no crashes. Now, BioShock may have some crashes. The Steam reviews and forums, the comments talk a lot about crashes in both the regular and the remastered. And by the way, we're playing the original version because, well, supposedly it has fewer crashes. And not having any Fallout 4 crashes is a huge plus for us. It says that our real issue back then was actually, most likely, the mod load order. But the jury is still out. You can't really make a decision based on 2 episodes. Fortunately, I still have the old drivers, so if crashing becomes an issue, we can downgrade everything and carry on, and we should be able to finish our playthrough. But so far, I'm pretty happy. Speaking of graphics cards, I'm still looking for help with our 1660. It's an MSI GTX 1660 OC 6 gigabyte. It's in the description below. But does anybody know what thickness of thermal pads you use on those? I can't find that anywhere, and I want to put some pads in to help cut down on the heat or replace the ones that are there if there are any, and I'd really like to know what I need before I do a GPU teardown on the only working GPU we have. So if you know those thicknesses, leave a comment about it, please. Oh, please, and thank you. Yeah, I really need to know. All right, now for health updates. I'm going to go back to something else other than the COVID and the dystonia and so forth. We'll get to that in a minute. But I need you to understand something about our videos here. One of the effects of a stroke is delayed response to events and stimuli and so forth. It's why a lot of stroke survivors don't drive. The speed of the inputs is hard for the brain to process depending on where the damage was, depending on how severe the damage was, all of that fun stuff. The same is true for really any brain injury survivor. It could be concussion, bullet wound, stroke, doesn't matter. Aneurysm, there's a list. So when you see me take extended periods of time to respond to some event on screen, that's what's going on. Now, I edit those out as much as possible, which means I make the gap between the event and my response shorter. So it may not seem like it happens as often as it does, but trust me, it happens a lot. It's also why I have such long silences from time to time. Part of that is I'm just not used to doing all this, even after a year, almost a year and a half now. Wow. But the majority is my brain trying to process stuff, and that's why multiple inputs are a problem, and I don't do multiplayer games. So there you go. That's some important stuff that I want you to know and understand. Okay, on to more recent stuff, because that goes back to 2010. We got stuff going on now. The bright spot is the brain MRI that we had done a couple of weeks ago. It came back, everything showing normal. And I have to admit, I'm surprised. With all the stuff going on, I expected something to show up. So I'm pretty happy there's nothing new going on in the old noggin. That's kind of good news. The partly cloudy part of all the news is I managed to get down, I'm now down to 1.5 liters, but I can't get rid of it because I keep I keep tanking into the 80s with activity. If I try to go below it, I go to the low 90s, which is good, but that's where it should go if I'm like running or something like that. But upper 80s, or low 90s, upper 80s. I get a little lightheaded. I feel short of breath without oxygen for like a shower or something. I've even tried walking to the end of the street and back, mid 80s, and that's not good. And I get the same effects mentioned. And below 90, by the way, is where you run into dangers of hypoxia and hypoxemia. The best explanation I can put together, and it's my paraphrase of what I've read, so it's 50-50 on it being actually correct. Basically, hypoxia and hypoxemia, respectively, they're short and long-term oxygen starvation, which can result in organ failure, brain death, all kinds of nasty, ugly things. And to be clear, I do not like nasty, ugly things. I don't. Just, saying. Oh, unless I can kill them. Zombies, snakes, space invaders. That I enjoy. Just kind of FYI in case you were wondering. But then again, I've had lung capacity issues since before the stroke in 2010. Anytime I went to the ER with what we thought might have been another stroke, if I relaxed or started to drift off, my breathing shallowed out and the blood oxygen levels would drop into the 80s, and the alarm would go off on the machine and it would startle me up, and I'd, breathe deep 4 or 5 times and the oxygen would come back up. I've noticed this. My wife has noticed this. Physical therapy has noted this. I don't know if they put it on the charts in the ER back then or not. I should probably go look. Yeah. Anyway, so what we're trying to do is get to a pulmonologist to evaluate lung function and capacity, and, that's where we are with the oxygen. Oh, yeah. I mentioned a couple of videos ago that I work with something called a spirometer for my breathing. Well, this is what that gizmo is. And what you do is you suck air through this hose, and you try to keep this bubble in this bottom section called best. There's 3 sections in here. Don't think it's showing up on the video. All while keeping this at 2,500 or higher. Now the problem is I'm struggling to get above 2,000. Every once in a while I can get up to about 2,250. Yeah, that's not good. Not good. We're pretty sure the problem is something called ineffective breathing. Now, this is our diagnosis. This is not a doctor. Take that for, what it's worth. What I've just said and what I'm about to say with a couple of bucks will get you coffee. Okay? That's the value, more or less ineffective breathing means my body doesn't breathe properly enough. Then there's sleep apnea. Now, there's 2 different kinds of sleep apnea. There's obstructive and there's central. Obstructive means you've got blockages. Your tongue slides back. The airway doesn't open all the way. Stuff like that. Central apnea is where the brain doesn't communicate with the body to make it breathe correctly. And what I have is mostly central apnea. And there are times I'm trying to breathe, but my body won't breathe. It's really frightening to wake up in the middle of the night trying to breathe, begging your body to breathe in your head because you have no breath to say anything, and your body won't breathe. Your chest won't move. Your lungs won't inflate. Think of it like an intermittent circuit. Every once in a while, it just doesn't work. And the next time it does. And in my case, it happens when I lie down, mostly when I lie on my back. The thing you want to do while you're sleeping? Yeah, great. That's just great. Anyway, that's one of the things where, the pulmonologist can't answer that question, but he can tell us how well the lungs are functioning. If and when we get an appointment, that is, with, COVID and all of that. We're also attempting to get another sleep study done. So we'll see what happens. Now, in terms of the dystonia, things are just more Or maybe confused is the best word for it. Since being in the hospital with COVID, the dysfunction in my hand has changed. And I think I mentioned while they were administering the remdesivir via IV for the first, whatever it is, 5-6 days, I think it was 5, might have been 6, I would get uncontrolled jerking and movement in my right leg, my right arm and hand, and my left arm and hand. Strangely enough, not the left leg for some reason. Go figure. Anyway, I'm thinking the remdesivir is what caused the acceleration of symptoms. I can't prove it, but I think so. I also haven't looked to see if they actually noted that in the chart. That would suck if they didn't. Anyway, since then, the dysfunction is now showing in both hands. A lot more in the left, a little bit more in the right. There was some already. It appears most commonly during use of the hands. Pretty sure that's what caused the jerkiness in the last AIM Lab video. And if you watched the Stranded Deep Redux live stream, the Redux, you heard me complain about an hour in that my hands were not working right. I had immense trouble trying to get my thumbs, both of them, by the way, to work the controller stick. Unfortunately, my right hand wasn't responding or not able to carry on in continued use. The left, that's already been doing it. Now it's the right. I'm guessing I can go so long in Fallout 4 because, well, A, I take breaks in the middle of recording, generally 2 hours worth of work to 1 hour sessions, but B, I get breaks in the loading screens, so it's not constant use of the thumb and the fingers, and it hasn't been a problem so far in BioShock, but those episodes are way less than an hour long, so I don't know. Anyway, I was offered a rush appointment with neurology folks last week for dystonia. I got to see one of the PAs. She no longer believes it's dystonia, but wouldn't say what it might be. She wanted to have some other experts look at video that she recorded. She thought it could be one of two things. Opposite ends of the spectrum was one of the things she said. One of these is recoverable and one is not. So we're actually not any closer to a decision on disability certification for the insurance company. We were supposed to get another phone call by the end of last week. We didn't. So far, we haven't heard back, but I have a message from them that they're working on it. So we'll see. Meanwhile, Social Security denied our latest appeal, so we're requesting a hearing with Social Security Disability. And of course, that's all dependent on what neurology determines. So when you're getting a Social Security Disability hearing, it can take months to arrange or not, which makes sense, I guess. It's the government, so who knows? But what can you do, right? It's the government. As usual, I'm going to end this with a very, very, per se, short spiritual note. Y'all are used to me going on. This is not that long. I will simply say I'm still surrendered to Jesus. My struggles have not changed my trust in him. They cause me to behave in ways I'm not proud of. I blew up my kids the other night over nothing. Now, a chunk of that is behavior for a long time. And some of that is the filters that got destroyed by the stroke. That's one of the things strokes do, and brain injuries in general. Your behavioral filters that you've learned that help you get along in society, your, when to speak, when to be silent, when to do something, when not to, all of that. After a brain injury, those are all screwed up. They may actually be completely gone, and it's bad. But no matter what the cause of my bad behavior, it's still wrong. Those blow-ups, those broken behavioral filters, they're a great example. They're why I do a lot of self-isolation. So I don't do that. I don't blow up at people. But the problem is that means I'm alone. And being alone is a bad thing. So that's not really a solution. And it can become a repeating downhill cycle. So yeah, but the struggles I face don't rule over me because my king rules over all. And that gives me a hope that nothing in this world can take away. I choose to strive to live his ways because it pleases my God. That kind of service as a surrendered, born-again child of his family. That's my acceptable form of worship. If you're not surrendered to him and born again by faith through the blood of Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, all those things you do that you think please him, they actually mean nothing. You want to know why? Well, simply put, it's because you're trying to earn your way to heaven. You're doing it to earn a reward, nothing more. And that means you're only serving yourself. Yeah, and that is pride, which is sin. Simple as that. So I urge you to surrender to the one who surrendered himself to reconcile you to God, to make a way for you to be brought to God, to be born again as his child, a member of his family. There is no other way to deal with the sin that separates you from God. You must acknowledge Jesus as Lord, final authority of your life. You must accept his sacrifice for your sins to be forgiven by a holy God. There is no other way to God and no other way into heaven. And I think that's going to be enough for now. As always, I want to thank you for spending your time with us today. Your time is valuable. You chose to spend it with us here at the Chartreuse Leprechaun, and we really do appreciate it, especially during these days of COVID. So please leave a comment about today's video, what you liked, what you didn't like, game suggestions, channel improvement ideas, how to better play Aim Lab, Patreon suggestions. It's very much a work in progress, so suggestions are absolutely welcome. Honestly, we'll take whatever feedback you want to give us because we want to get better and we'd like your feedback to help us do that. Also, hit that like button, subscribe, set yourself up for notifications, all that fun stuff so you don't miss anything around here. Check out our merch page. The link is in the description below. Check out our Patreon page, which, as I said, is a work in progress. Also linked in the description below. But always, always, always remember, if you see it and you can't quite explain it, you can be sure the Leprechaun did it. Now you have yourselves a great day, and we will see you here next time on the Chartreuse Leprechaun. Bye-bye.